Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Who remembers the BJ and Bill show all those years ago on WOLZ? Well, many have said they missed the show, and guess what? They're back! Welcome to the BJ and Bill podcast.
Welcome to the BJ and Bill podcast. I always, post stuff online about National Radio Day and things like that. And I always get comments saying, we miss the BJ and Bill show. Well, everybody in the world is doing a podcast, so why not us?
So welcome back.
How many years has it actually been?
Gosh, 15 years?
Probably,
or more.
Because, we did the show and it was very successful on OLZ. And I know
That's
that was
WOLZ for those of you who are just joining us.
And I think that was at least a 6-year run, wasn't it?
At least.
And then, of course, I remember the date that I had the transplant, but I had to leave the radio show.
Yes.
To do the transplant. And actually, the week that I had the transplant is the week they decided, as they say in radio, we're going in a different direction.
Yes. Well, do you want to rewind a little bit maybe and just kind of bring everybody in on what the heck is going on here? Because that's BJ Odom for everybody who doesn't know. And if you don't know, what the hell are you doing here? That's BJ. I'm sorry. Was I allowed to say that? I forgot.
You can say whatever you want on a podcast.
That's right. I forgot. Okay.
You can even drop an F-bomb, but I don't.
No, I will never. I don't think that's not my style. But anyway, thanks for letting me know. So ladies and gentlemen, that is BJ Odom over there. And for those of you who remember, he was the morning show host and main guy and humorous guy on the BJ and Bill morning show on WOLZ in Fort Myers, Florida for many years. Just crazy stuff, right?
Yeah, don't you don't have to say so many minis, even though there's a lot of minis in there.
And my name is Bill Stevens, and I was the faithful morning sidekick and news guy, and most often straight man to all of his terrible jokes. So for some reason, like you said, everybody's doing a podcast these days. I mean, if the dog could talk, the dog would do a podcast, and some of them probably even do it without just barking. Who knows? So here we are.
Probably the way podcasts are running.
So here we are.
It even works these days.
20 years later, 15, 20, who knows? We're not going to go.
I can tell you this. I had the transplant March 9th, 2003.
Really?
So pretty much 20 years ago is when the show stopped on WOLZ. But
I didn't know it had been 20 years.
Oh, yeah. It'll be 20 years this coming March.
Yeah.
Hard to believe, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. I remember it like it was yesterday, though. I really do. And you're right. That was pretty much the end of the show era at that point. So at that point, we had probably already been on the air for 5 or 6 years, like you said.
Yes.
Wow.
And we were always in the top 3 rating wise. So management was very happy. And one year we always won 35-65. For those of you wondering what that means, year-olds.
Right.
They
in the
were
ratings.
number 1 in town with that age group.
Yes.
We were always like in the top 3, 25-54. But that's when Howard Stern was still going.
Yes.
Strong on the radio. And I kept telling our boss we would beat him someday, 25-54. And my boss said, no, that would never happen. And we actually did one book. Remember that?
Yes, we did. We actually beat Howard Stern in the ratings.
We were
in our little town.
Time.
Yes, in our little town. Yes, which was awesome. Made everybody a lot of money. Made salespeople very happy.
Yeah, it helped our pocketbooks too.
Yes, it did. Yes,
until the end.
and then somebody out there decided he needed a heart transplant. And it all came to I'm not going to say a screeching close because you were out, what, 3-4 months?
Yeah, and you were just
and I
running
did,
the show
and I
yourself,
pretty
right?
much did the show by myself, which was, I mean, it was okay, but it was like, this is not what I'm here for. But it was okay. And then when you came back, then
Well, actually,
then it all ended. It was funny.
I think what it was, I called you on the air.
You did. You actually called me like the Monday after the surgery, right?
Right. And I said, hey, guess
You're
what?
still alive.
I got a new heart.
Unbelievable, the reaction to that, both from the list. I still remember that. I, honest to God, I will remember that forever, because you called, the listeners went crazy with that, with thinking, wow, he's had like a heart like literally within days, right? I mean,
Well,
you had
actually,
the
it
heart
was the next day. I had the surgery on Sunday.
and you called on a Monday morning.
I called on a Monday morning.
Oh my God.
But I think what it was, since I had a bad heart almost all my life,
Right.
I had such a burst of energy. I felt like, and of course they had prednisone, a very high dose of prednisone, and then you feel like you're Superman anyway. So I said, I'm going to call Bill and tell him I got a new heart and I'm ready to go.
Now, I think I told you this story. I think I've told you this story in the past, but I'll repeat it just for our listeners. And that is, yes, you were on the air. The phones, as we say in the radio business, the phones blew up. That means a lot of people called in and went, oh my God, thank God he's still okay, and all of that stuff. And then the boss came in and handed me my butt on a silver platter and said, don't ever do that. And
Really?
obviously it was because they had plans to make changes when you got back.
Well, I know that they were made before I got back, because what was it, I think about 4 months, 6 months later, I could come back.
Right.
And then, of course, they said, well, the show's gone. We have nothing for you. And I said, well, because there's that law, isn't there?
Yeah.
And they were, well, and I don't know. So I finally, sent a letter to the head honcho of Clear Channel and said, hey, they got me in a non-compete. They won't let me go anywhere else.
Right.
They won't let me back on the air there.
Right.
This is unfair. And I guess he got on the phone with the bosses in Fort Myers, and they immediately called me and said, your non-compete is released.
Right.
Because I had like a year, they were paying me good money.
Yes.
So, they wanted to, protect their investment in that town.
Yes.
And so I think it was about 6 months later, though, we went on the air on another station. The only problem was they never really let the BJ and Bill show be the BJ and Bill show.
On that new radio station.
Yeah. And then we went to another radio station.
Yes.
And they were even worse.
Yes.
They were like, okay, talk for, 15 seconds and then you're done. Well, our show wasn't about that. Our show was about our lives, about funny stories, about contests, things going on in the community. Remember one time we had a complete jazz band in the studio with us.
Oh yeah.
Playing music.
Oh yeah. That was awesome. I remember all of those things. And I just wanted to back up 2 seconds. If ever anybody writes a business book, well, there's 1,000 million business books out there, but that to me has to be one of the worst decisions ever, when it comes to how to handle a business move like that. Take most popular disc jockey on your radio station, the biggest, most money-making show on your radio station, have it get huge. You were on the front page of the newspaper. You were on the front page. The fact that this morning DJ just had a successful heart transplant, and 20 years ago, that was a pretty big deal, still is. And then, oh, by the way, he just got fired. And if ever, to me, that, how do you make a bonehead decision like that? Where, in what book, how do you not bring this guy back and have a freaking parade to say, oh my God, he's back, we love him, don't you love it? To me, that's a no-brainer. And yet they totally screwed it up. as bad as you can screw it up. As bad as you can screw it up, they did it. So anyway,
now,
I've been meaning to get that off my chest for 20 years. What's that?
Someone on the inside did tell me it was a nightmare there for them because of, the way the people in the town reacted to the whole decision. It was probably, like you said, the worst PR move ever to be made in the history of radio.
Unbelievable how that could happen. And I mean, we know the people that were there. I mean, they were our friends. They were people that, our boss and all of those guys. How do you do that? How do you make a decision like that and not think just a little bit long-term, just a tiny little bit long-term to bring the guy back and welcome him back with open arms and all that after a heart transplant? My God. Anyway, I feel better now. I loved got that off my chest. What's that?
What I loved about it, there was a station, and we'll say it, people that are listening from Fort Myers, they're even on the air today. Stan and Haney.
Right.
They went on the air and they actually had a fundraiser for me to pay my hospital bills. And they made a big deal out of what the other station did to let us go. And they just, they pounded it. They had me on the air a couple times and they just pounded it, which was in a way cool.
Yes, it was. Now, remember, again, for folks who don't remember that or who didn't know the story, the people that Stan and Haney that he's talking about were on a different radio station.
With a different company.
And a different format. And typically in radio, it's like it's like, a fire and water. You hate each other. You're it's like competition. It's like, pick your favorite two football teams that, compete with each other or whatever. It's like, that's the way it is in radio. You are trying to beat those guys. And for those guys who we knew, they were good guys. For those guys to speak up and say, hey, this is like BS, man. This guy's getting a raw deal. And he's on a different radio station. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Well, it made me feel good anyway.
Yes, I know. That was awesome. It really was.
Were you still in town and were you listening to them when they went haywire? Talking about
I didn't. I was boy, I don't remember when I left town, when I moved out of town. But yeah, that was believe me, we have so much more story to cover. We're just now getting through the radio part of it. So yeah, there's a ton of story there
it's been
for
so
everyone.
long.
Right.
We both changed cities.
Both changed cities.
We're kind of doing what we did before.
Right.
But of course, I'm older than you, so
I guess
I can say I'm retired.
Right.
Which is, I hate to say that word, but I still do 1 day a week on a radio station.
Right. And of course, we want to thank somebody's son for offering us this opportunity to do this podcast, because he is just killing it out there. I don't know, where did your son Gentry get these genes, these hardworking genes from? Because I never saw that in you. Where this kid's a rock star when it comes to business. Where did that come from, Dad?
I think what really got him elevated to the next level, who is kind of our boss, not really his boss, but he owns a big chunk of the company, would be Shaquille O'Neal.
Oh,
and I think that was one of the best things that ever happened to my son, those two getting together, which is a story in itself.
Yeah, we should save that for, maybe that's a future episode. But yeah, there's your son has a business arrangement with basketball legend and superstar Shaquille O'Neal, Shaq, and does an online radio station with Shaq and plays music, hip hop, and that sort of thing. And I know that because yours truly writes the blog that accompanies that radio station. So I know more about Shaq than Shaq does. I mean, that's not true, of course, but I know more about Shaq than most people do, because I'm 3 times a week, I'm writing a blog about what he's doing and what he's involved with and where he's going and all that. And it's super cool. And, it's big fun. But again, that's another story for another day. So, wow. This is where it's been. Well, no, actually, that's not where it's been. That's the history. That's everything that happened way in the distant past.
Like I said, 20 years ago, pretty much.
20 years ago. Oh my gosh. And so if you're just now listening to this podcast and you're wondering, who the heck these guys are and why the heck they have this story. Now you know, and in the future, I mean, we're not always just going to be reminiscing about where we've been and what we've done and what two gray-haired old men have to talk about on a podcast together. I mean, we'll just do, if you never heard the show, maybe we'll bring it kind of up to speed. If you never heard the show in the past, yes, we played oldies music, you know, the Beatles and the Supremes and all of that fun stuff. And we played all that, but we also had a lot of fun on the radio, just talking about everyday life. And like you said, we had a jazz band on, we had the ladies, the barbershop quartet ladies were great. They were super fun. They wait a minute, they were called Sweet Adelines.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember them now.
And that's the female version of barbershop quartets, where it's just 4 or 5 singers, a cappella, no music, no instruments, no musical instruments other than their voice. And they were on with us many times, and I actually had the opportunity to be on stage with them one night because they were doing a song that required a man's voice for one word. Mr. Sandman. Remember, boy, set the Wayback Machine. Mr. Sandman. Mr. Sandman, send me a dream. And there was a spot where it was just Mr. Sandman, and the male voice would go, yes. And literally they did it one night at a big, thousands of people are on stage. And I wore a suit and tie and a cool hat, I think. And they're doing the song. And in the middle of the song, I just wandered out on stage, stepped in front of a microphone. They got to that point in the song. They all turned and looked at me and I went, yes. And they went on with the song and I turned and walked off. And I had one word on stage in the song. It was one of the high points of my career. It was awesome. It was awesome. So,
you know what I enjoyed the most? Talking about going to the Wayback Machine, one of the most interesting people we ever had on the air was Peter Noon. Remember, he talked about being 16 years old and he's in Herman's Hermits.
That's right.
And they're on the road with the Beatles.
He saw so much of the early days of rock and roll and had so many good stories. You're right. Talk about that more. He was terrific.
Yeah, he was. And like I said, he had story after story after story. He toured with Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones. He had stories there. They did work with the Beatles. He had stories there. In fact, there wasn't enough time for us to go through all the stories he had, but they were just, and of course, some he said he could not repeat on the radio. I remember that too. It was so wild that I can't even talk about it. But can you imagine being a 16-year-old kid out on the road with people like the Beatles and the Stones?
Unreal. And that was, he was actually in Fort Myers in Southwest Florida for a concert that he did.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything fancy. I think it was like at some street fair or something like that. And he ended up bringing us up on stage, didn't he?
I think so. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah.
Well, he was in town like 2 or 3 times and we were around him every time. I know one time he did the baseball park.
Right.
And one time he did the Edison parade.
Yes.
And he did a show just before the Edison parade. And I think that's the one that he brought us up on stage and he talked about us the most because we'd like spent the whole day with him before.
Yes.
So we were like fresh on his mind.
And I remember I listened to him. There were no podcasts in those days, but I listened to him on an interview on another station or I listened to him like the next night. He was traveling. And so I figured out where he was going to be. And I listened to him and he was on another radio station and he was talking about us on the radio with somebody. It was just so cool. It was, and I remember, and he was a star. He was a rock star, literally, but he was actually a nice guy. He seemed to be
really
anyway.
Nice
And I remember he said, that he was back in the day where you still had CDs, where that was still a thing, that he would bring thousands and thousands of CDs with him on the road. And that's how he made his money. I mean, yeah, he got paid a little bit to perform at the Edison Festival of Lights parade in small town Fort Myers, Florida. But, with a few thousand people in the audience and they all wanted his CD, and he would sit at a table and autograph every CD that anybody bought. And he was there for hours with a line of people signing CDs. And I thought, wow, who does that anymore? Nobody does that.
Greg the Hammer charges you when he gives you an autograph.
Well, I mean, he was selling you his CD, obviously, and he was making money on the CDs that he sold. But yeah, he wasn't charging you separately for the autograph. No, you bought the CD, he signed it for you, and that was so cool. That was just so cool.
Another story for another time, but I did, I've never had a real job. I've had radio, I did stand-up comedy for a long time.
Right.
And then I also worked in the independent wrestling world.
Right.
And so Greg would go to these little independent shows. He'd bring like a stack of, headshot pictures of him. And he would sit there and he would sign them and sell them. And that's where he made his money after all those years of making the big money, in the WW, which was the WWF back in those days. And then when he got older, had to go to the independent shows. That's how he made his big bucks.
So, folks, you're getting a real inside view of the showbiz world here. How people try and make a few dollars here and there to get by. Everybody thinks, oh, it's big, it's glamorous, it's cool. Yeah, it can be glamorous and fun. Glamorous. I don't know if I'd ever call my job glamorous. It was fun and exciting, and it got you in front of people, and people got to tell you how much they appreciated the BJ and Bill show and all of that sort of a thing. And yeah, that was awesome. That was terrific. I always remember it happened to you and me, and it happened. I mean, it happens probably all radio and maybe TV. Well, TV personalities, obviously, because their faces on TV. But you and I would go to restaurants. Shout out to Mel's Diner in Fort Myers, Florida. Right? Well, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day.
Manager Bill is very excited about this podcast.
I'm writing that down.
He's already waiting for it.
Yeah. So shout out to Manager Bill at Mel's Diner. But I'm writing that down because there's a whole nother story there. But what I did want to say was that you and I would go to lunch or dinner or something, after the show, and we would be sitting there talking along. And of course, it didn't happen all the time, but often somebody would come over and go, I recognize your voice. Aren't you BJ Odom? Aren't you Bill Stevens? And we have to go, yes, of course, blah, blah, blah. And some people, God bless them, where are they now? Some people would even ask for your autograph.
Yes, that was always fun. I should have sold it for $5.
Should have had them buy dinner or something like that, right? That was awesome. Yes. I remember I was asked for my autograph a couple of times, and I'm like, why?
But here it is.
Here it is. Yeah. Here you go. Thanks.
But I remember one time we were in Mel's Diner.
Right.
We went after the show. We went for breakfast because, the show got over at 10, and we really didn't eat breakfast because we were there, 5 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes we'd have morning snacks, but we wouldn't really have a hearty breakfast.
Right.
So we go to Mel's Diner, and we're just sitting there enjoying our breakfast. And the table behind us all of a sudden started talking about what we were talking about that morning,
right,
on the air. And that was one of the highlights of my life too, to hear just someone, talking about what we'd talked about the day before, that day, and they were having a discussion on it. And it was like, wow, that's cool.
It was super cool to know that it was very gratifying, very, whatever term you want to use, gratifying, cool, heartening. You felt it. You really felt like, wow, people are actually paying attention to us and we're having an impact on people's lives. If only just for a couple of minutes to brighten somebody's life and to tell them a joke or to give them a little something to talk about over breakfast or whatever. And yeah, that is the coolest thing ever. I mean, to me, that's what the job is all about, is the impact that you have on people. Yeah.
And I've had people come up to me say, I was going through a rough time and I would listen to the show and it got me through it. I don't know. I mean, we weren't playing religious music or anything, but no. I guess just our wit, humor, and whatever we talk about that day just brighten someone's day. And they go, if it wasn't for your show, I don't know if I would have got through it. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you've mentioned that a few times, and I remember it myself. And I think it's just, and I do a lot of reading in all kinds of areas, in personal growth and personal development and stuff. It's kind of one of my favorite little things. And what you said is so true, is that you don't have to be an expert on anything. You don't have to have any fancy, advice to offer, whatever, or anything like that. You're just a positive influence on somebody. You're just, I hate to use the superhero term, but you're like a force for good out there in the world. You're doing good things and you're not bringing people down. And that's a good thing. The world needs more of that, especially nowadays. And
like I said, we had topics,
right?
But we talked a lot about real life, things that was going on in our lives.
Yes.
My health issues, things that was going with you.
Mm-hmm.
It was all, basically, we always called it the show about nothing.
Mm-hmm.
We're just kind of doing what we're doing now. We just went on and started talking about, things that have happened and things that have gone on in our lives. And I was one time told, which I hate consultants, but I was told by a radio consultant one time, it's just like back in the old days. A lot of the younger generation won't get this, but you had a party line for your telephone. Now everybody's got cell phones, of course, but sometimes you'd pick up that party line and there would be other people talking. And you would do your best just to be quiet and listen in on that conversation. And somebody told me one time, it's just like that.
Right.
People enjoy listening in on someone else's conversation.
I don't doubt that. And that's probably, an extension of that, of course, turned into all of these, celebrity gossip shows and stuff like that. And then later on, of course, everything not changed. That whole conversation, that whole listening in on thing moved online. So now you have Facebook, and now you have Twitter, and now you have every other form of social media or whatever. And it's all just, it's the same thing. Like you said, it's just a listening in on what's going on. And I think that's probably, I'm not a huge social media fan. I see where it fits in. I think some people take it a little too far, and that's probably another conversation for another day. But yes, the positive thing about social media is the ability to know what's going on with people that you might not be terribly connected with. Maybe it's like I see your posts on social media all the time, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's what BJ's up to, or that's what so-and-so, whatever. And so, yeah, it's a way of kind of building a little bit of community. I think that's the word there, community.
And yeah, it's true. It's just like the same thing. It's like, people like to get involved, I guess. They like to hear about other people. And, even on Facebook now, if I post, and I think that was big on our show too, because like I said, I went through health issues my entire life.
Right.
And sometimes we'd talk about, my health issues. Right. I didn't mind talking and sharing what was going on with my health. Hey, I might need a heart transplant.
Right.
I need a heart transplant. I have to leave the show because I need a heart transplant.
Right.
But I would talk about these things, and, some people would relate, but even if they had something else going on, they could relate to the illness and the things I was going through. And I just think it was, I don't know, like you said, we did good things for the people, and hopefully this podcast down the road will do the same.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void were prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
I believe that it will. I really do. We wouldn't be here if we didn't believe it. So yeah, good for us.
Now I don't know how you do this, because I've seen podcasts before, but if you're listening and you're enjoying this podcast about nothing, basically, you can hit the like button, the share button, any of that kind of stuff. We would so much appreciate. Repost it on your Facebook if you can. Do whatever you need to. But let's get the word out that BJ and Bill, as they say, are back. But not on the air. We're doing a podcast.
That's right. Which is, in my mind, I don't know about you. Do you do many? Are you a big podcast consumer, as they say? Because boy, I am.
It's grown. I mean, I don't listen. I can't say I sit here all day. Of course, I like listening to my son's podcast.
Right.
They do another one called the Vinyl Boys. I like listening to that. They take an old record and they actually use vinyl when they do that. So that's kind of cool to listen to that. I'm not going to say that I listen to some and go, well, I can never do that again.
Right.
And then I listen to some and say, yeah, I could listen to a few more of these.
I try to go for a walk every day. Not always successful, but I try to go for a walk every day, and got my little earpods, my little earbuds and my phone. And that passes the hour while I walk. I would listen to a podcast, and I've got a regular lineup of probably a half a dozen different shows that I follow. If you're on your iPhone, you click the follow button and you download all, and they're so good. There's so many good people out there doing so much good stuff with interviews, with experts, with insights into what's going on. Because, I mean, if you watch TV, God help you, you're only getting the 10-second little soundbite, and you're getting somebody else. You haven't
been watching The Bachelorette? What's wrong with you?
I have not been watching The Bachelorette. Oh, no. That's another story. That's another BJ and Bill story. Didn't we have one of the Bachelorettes was one of the friends of our program?
Yeah, Kristen.
Yeah.
She has a new name now, and I can't think of it because she got married. It doesn't matter. So anyway, long story short, I listen to podcasts and I really enjoy them. And I hope that we can come up to the standards of some of the other good ones that I have listened to. I kind of doubt it, but what the heck, it's worth a try. In fact, after my transplant, because we got to know Kristen pretty well, I did a morning show with her for a while.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Dumped Bill Stevens for the beautiful girl. Can't imagine.
Yeah, it wasn't that hard to do, let me tell you.
Damn you, BJ Odom.
The only thing that well, you never did, which maybe I would have enjoyed more every day, because we did a morning show.
Right.
She had to bring her big suitcase in with makeup. And the first hour or two of the show, she'd be over there putting makeup on. Of course, she always said, "Can I put some on you too?" And a couple times I gave in, but
where are those pictures? That was before Facebook.
I don't think there's pictures.
That was before Facebook.
If they are, they could make some money off of them, just letting me buy them so no one would see them.
Oh my goodness. All right, boy, folks, you are hearing history today that you have never heard before, because by God, I haven't heard a whole heck of a lot of it. And that's a great thing. But so like Mr. BJ said, if you are enjoying this, or if you're wondering who the heck these guys are, maybe you've never heard us before, maybe not, maybe you're new. Either way, it's just a couple of guys who had a radio show a long time and had a really good time doing it, and now are going to make another swing at it here and see how it goes. So like BJ said, if you can, feel free to please share this in any way you can. Put it on your Facebook feed, your Twitter, your whatever social you happen to be good at or having fun with or whatever. Just let some folks know. And even if they never heard of BJ and Bill, maybe they'll learn to love us over time. Who knows? I like that. How's that work?
Because I got to admit, it's been 20 years since we were on the air together. And our number one demographics age-wise was 35, 64 and 64 plus.
Right.
Where we were always number one. We've
Right.
got to remember some of our audience, and thank God I am not one of them. Could have been a couple times, but some of our audience has left us, unfortunately.
Perhaps. Yeah. Well, lots of people have. I mean, it happens to everybody. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we were popular with the older, I don't want to say older, but in the radio, like the numbers BJ's quoting are ages of people. So yeah, in the radio business, your success, right? Your success is determined by the age group that you appeal to. Because if you're talking to 16-year-olds and 18-year-olds, you can sell them a lot of beer. But if you're talking to 55-year-olds, you can sell them a lot of luxury cars and real estate. So it all depends on where you're at in the marketplace of things there, right? So yeah, that's good. I love that. Let's take a break for a second. I'm going to go refill my coffee. Does that work for you? And we'll be back not back. We'll just take a break and I'll reset things and be right back.
Sounds good.
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18 plus.
Welcome back to the show about nothing, the BJ and Bill podcast, which even now freaks me out to say it that way because, well, we used to do the radio thing. So BJ Odom is there. I am Bill Stevens here. And we're just talking about, we've been catching up on kind of some old stories. And I guess if you were a listener back in the day, now that's interesting because, I mean, a podcast can reach millions of people. So we're going to just kind of start from where we were and then grow from there, I guess, right?
No, that sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah. So dare I ask, how's it going for the past 20 years?
Well, because of the meds I have to take for the heart transplant, I had a kidney transplant.
Wow.
In 2015. And really, my life has taken a curve, I would say, for the worst after
Really?
COVID. I don't know if it has affected you or not, but when you have a transplant, you have a low immune system.
Right.
So as soon as this COVID thing hit the world, I pretty much I went pretty much in hiding for at least a year and a half, almost 2 years.
Wow.
Like we finally started going out to eat, and we'd only go out to eat. And thank God we're in Florida because we'd only go out to eat at places where you could eat outdoors. Now it's not as much fun in the summertime, but we were going out basically in January and February. And but we would only go to places where we could, eat outside.
Really?
Now, I would say in the last 6 months, that's kind of changed. Maybe that's why I had COVID, about a few weeks ago.
Right.
But, and of course I had it also at the first of the year. You think I got it now because my voice is starting to go. We've only done a half hour in the show.
And you're already starting to, lose the voice a little bit. Have some more of that tea there, old man.
I got to let it cool down a little bit.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I just got a new batch. It's hot.
Hot off the presses. So if you don't mind a little interviewing here, I mean, what was your experience? I mean, I'm sure that they took super good care of you because after all, I mean, you're like the baby of the heart transplant program there. You're like one of their test cases there. So they're taking good care of you. What was your experience like with that?
Well, the very first time I tested positive, which was at the beginning of the year, they gave me like an antiviral infusion.
Oh boy.
And that lasted about 45 minutes to an hour. And I did that for 3 days straight.
Wow.
At Tampa General. The second time, because of course, COVID has been around longer.
Yeah.
This last, go around hasn't been as serious. I don't want to say that, but it doesn't seem, has affected people the same as it did in the beginning.
Right.
So they had a lot more of the presidential cocktail, as they say.
Oh, the presidential cocktail.
So I had the same thing that Trump and Biden probably got. And that was just a one-time went to the hospital, got it. It still had to go through an IV, but it was more like an injection through an IV. And that's all I had the last time.
Okay.
So they have taken good care of me.
And I guess, not to politicize it or anything, but you also had the vaccines and all the boosters and all of that.
Oh,
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now when I'm told, because I had COVID,
right.
Because I'm kind of excited about the new, booster or the one they say you'll probably be getting every year. And I've been getting the flu shot every year since I knew I was going to need a transplant.
Right.
That's one thing that was kind of like, if you're going to need a transplant, you really, and I never had a flu shot before. So I got my first flu shot just,
Okay.
like maybe 6 months to a year before I got my transplant.
Right.
And I immediately got the flu.
Well, that's how it works, kind of. Yeah.
And so I was saying, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? I gave myself a shot to get the flu.
Right.
And I will say, I've been
Right.
getting it for at least 21 years. And I have not really, my kids have gotten sicker than I have in the last 20 years.
Wow.
And, hopefully that'll work with the COVID too.
Wow.
Now, the thing that really hurt me, we moved up to the Orlando area
Right.
because our daughter moved up here.
Right.
My wife wanted to be, well, so did I.
I
Wanted to be
understand.
closer to our daughter. Of course, I miss my son. I wish I could spend more time with him in Fort Myers. But it was kind of cool because I was doing only comedy at the time when I moved
Right.
up here.
Right.
And I do comedy magic. So it's kind of different than everybody else's comedy. And so all of a sudden I became the new shiny object in the Orlando area.
Oh, cool.
And I was getting booked a lot.
Very
And
cool.
in fact, before COVID hit, I probably had more on the books in comedy magic than I had in my entire comedy career as far as income.
Awesome.
And then all of a sudden COVID hit and I had some country clubs. I was going, the Village has a comedy club, but they also have, like the big stage shows. I wasn't doing the comedy club. I was going to do one of the big stage shows.
Wow.
Which was going to pay really well.
At the Villages.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so everything seemed to be falling in place. By the way, that's the new dog. If you hear that in the back.
Oh yeah. That was the first we've heard of him. Yes.
But that was going to be a really good paying gig too. But then that's just as COVID hit is when all of it fell apart then. And I mean, like I said, I probably had the best money and the best lineup I had ever had in my career.
Right.
And then COVID hit. And to be honest, I'm kind of getting the itch a little bit, but I haven't been on stage since COVID.
Really? I saw a post for you. I saw a Facebook post of yours. Maybe it was an older one of you doing a trick.
It's probably an older one.
Yeah.
Because my last show was, I think, and what the cool thing about it, and he was also on our show many times. The last show I did before COVID, Mark Price and I did a show together.
Okay.
In St. Cloud, Florida. We did a weekend. There's a club up there called Porky's.
Yep.
And we did that together and had a lot of fun together because he's always fun to be around. And then, that was the last show that I did. And I think that was, it was early February, maybe. Yeah, I think it was early February.
Wow. And are you looking to get back into doing this? I mean, are you staying in touch with all of these clubs and everything? Because maybe I've had a
couple club owners call and say, "Hey, when you're ready,
okay, cool,
let us know."
That's awesome.
But after being off 2.5 years, timing is going to be off. I'm going to have to do some open mics even if I go back.
Yeah.
And, like I'm doing a Sundays on a radio station up here, WPCV, which has got a killer signal.
Look that one up online, folks.
We had a killer signal with WOLZ. WOLZ gives 100,000 watts, which is but you couldn't really go much west because you had the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
But we did almost get all the way over to Miami,
right,
which was cool. But now this is a 100,000 watt station, and it gets all the way over to one coast. I mean, I'm coast to coast.
Coast to coast. So, but for folks who are not in Florida, they could look you up. They could find. I'm assuming you're on the internet too. The show is probably on the internet.
Yeah, they have an app. I work every Sunday from 1 until 4.
Awesome.
So it's not a long shift, but I was doing every night. I was doing 7 to 10.
Wow.
Every night, but then that just got to be too much because I had a lot of appointments.
Yeah.
In Tampa, I ended up catching pneumonia where I was out for when I got pneumonia, I really did. That's the first time ever, even with all my transplants, the first time I was ever in the hospital, and I said, all right, this is it. I ain't going to be around much longer because I had to drain fluid off my lungs.
Oh boy.
So I was in the hospital for 3 weeks, and it was a brutal 3 weeks.
How long ago was that?
I would say, I'm going to guess almost a year ago.
Uh-huh.
And, that really took me down. That's when I couldn't go back. I said, I just can't do it. So now, then they let me go to 1 day a week, which I'm happy with. And, when we first moved up here too, since we're in Central Florida, actually in Winter Haven,
right?
But we would go to Disney. We have Disney passes. We went to Disney all the time,
right?
Went to all the parks. And then, of course, COVID hit there also. So
yeah,
when we first moved up here, I felt like I was living my best life, basically. Half retired, half not retired, going to Disney. And I didn't start the radio thing until after COVID also, because I figured, I can't do comedy. I got to do something.
Right.
And so I went and applied at the local radio station, which is in Lakeland, Florida.
Yes, yes.
And so that's kind of where I am and what I've been doing. Now you moved also, but you moved a couple times.
My history, yes. Since you and I were together in Fort Myers, Florida, I have been to Austin, Texas.
I forgot about that one.
I met a young lady. I met a lady online with, one of the various dating apps out there. And I
swiped right, folks.
I probably did, yes. And moved to Austin. Austin, Texas is an amazing, wonderful, so cool city. Unfortunately, it's kind of being loved to death. I mean, there's so many people coming there because Austin, everybody knows, Austin is super cool. And it's kind of getting too crowded. So anyway, had a on again, off again 2-year relationship with a lady in Texas. I ended up working for Apple. Yes, that Apple, iPhone Apple in Austin, Texas for a couple of years I didn't know this, but Austin is like their second biggest corporate headquarters after California. But when the relationship ended, it was a little out there. Like, I mean, I've lived like you. I've lived mostly on the East Coast. I mean, I know you're from, Indiana. I'm from Ohio. I get it. But we've lived in Florida and elsewhere in the East most of our lives. And I'm like, that was kind of it was fun for a while, but I don't really need to stay here kind of a thing. So when that relationship came to a close, I also thought I don't need to stay. So at that time, my mother was in her final couple of years and had lived in the same house for 30 years in Cleveland. So I actually moved back in with my mother to take care of her for about 2 years, and not quite 2 years, maybe 18 months or so. And taking her to doctor's appointments, taking her to, keeping the house in good shape as best I could and all of that, knowing that, someday that, this would have to be, closing. Something that all of us, I think, as people now, as baby boomers in our 50s and 60s and whatever, now we're all facing that thing with our parents. And not all of us, but many of us, have aging parents that need care and, have properties and stuff that need to be taken care of and all of that. And I stayed with my mother for a couple of years and got things in pretty good shape there. And then she was doing okay. And then, at that point I was like, okay, if you're okay, I'm okay. And my mother and I are great. We were great together, but she's like, yeah, get out of here. You're fine. I don't, she didn't want me around all that much. So I moved back to Florida and I moved to Clearwater at that time. And I had a tech support kind of a job in the technology business and all of that. And then ended up finding another relationship in the Sarasota area and moved there. And I'm going to compress things a lot because there's a lot in all of that. But then my mother did end up passing eventually, probably 2 years after I had gone back to Florida. And so I went back to Cleveland to take care of all the legal stuff. And thank goodness. I mean, note to everybody with elderly parents, do everything you can to make sure the affairs are in order before your parents or loved ones pass, because the legal nightmare that awaits you if you don't is just too painful. It's a nightmare. Thankfully, my mother and I had the presence of mind to get a lawyer, to get yours truly power of attorney, which means I can sign for her in everything. So I was able to close bank accounts and financial accounts and insurance accounts and sell a house and do all of that relatively easily because I had that one piece of paper that said Bill's signature is as good as his mother's signature. And that made all the difference. And I've heard from others who have had experiences, both good and bad. So anyway, long story short, or long story longer, took care of my mother's business in Ohio, was there for a while, came back to Florida, was involved in a relationship in the Sarasota area for a long while. And then only recently, when that kind of came to a close and time to move on, found myself.
Whoever thought you were going to be the playboy?
I know, right? And I'm not. Thanks for the good word, though. I really appreciate your.
We thought if anyone was going to be a playboy,
it was going to be you.
Be me, but no, it became Bill Stevens.
And here you are.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to. Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Married for 40 years or whatever it is, with kids and grandkids and dogs and houses, and you're just living the life.
Not to reflect off of but we do have a new dog.
A new dog.
Because during COVID, actually, the very beginning of COVID,
yep,
we lost the Australian Shepherd that we had.
Not due to COVID.
No, not due to COVID.
Oh, okay,
that was all hit about the same time.
Okay, all right, that was a little.
My
weird.
wife got very, very, very depressed.
All right,
and so I finally,
okay,
have another dog.
New dog.
But since we do live in a villa, which is smaller than a house and very small backyard, we got a miniature Australian Shepherd, which is pretty cool.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So he's not
back to your life. Sorry about that.
Well, no. That's believe me, we're all just catching up with everything here. So it's fine. It's fine. So I'm not going to say I threw a dart at a map. My brother, God bless him, when he was alive, my brother did that once with a friend of his. They threw a dart at a map and said, "Oh, we're moving to Phoenix, Arizona." I had been here, and here is Gainesville, Florida, home of the Gators. Go Gators. I had been here once or twice, liked the looks of the town, and I thought, what the heck? I'll move to Gainesville. So here, I've been here, less than a year, and I am definitely not a playboy, but I am a man who enjoys his private life on his own. I have my nice little apartment with my nice TV and my nice internet, and I can talk to my friends, online or in real life or whatever. And here I am loving my life. It's all good.
Now, are you a Gators fan?
Well, you can't live in Gainesville and not be a Gators fan.
I lived in a small town, and this is long before the BJ and Bill show.
Right.
Early in my radio career. I was at a small station out, but it got into Gainesville, and that's the main reason why I took the job. I took a programming job at a little radio station, which is not even there anymore, in Williston, Florida.
Yep.
And we got into Gainesville, had offices in Gainesville. Studio was still out in Williston. And like I said, you had to be a Gator fan.
Oh my God.
It didn't matter where you were from, what you just kind of became, because that town is one of the coolest towns, like you said, ever when it comes to college football. Of course, West Lafayette, because I am originally from Indiana.
Right.
West Lafayette is similar with the Purdue Boilermakers. You live in West Lafayette, you pretty much have to be a Boilermaker.
Right. Right. And you want another name from the past? Remember our old friend Ted Fitzgeorge?
Yes.
Another radio guy from
I still keep in contact with him all the time.
I'm in contact with him all the time because he is, I mean, on the scale of Gator fans, he's an 11.
Oh, yeah. He's up there for every game.
And he was actually, as we are recording this, he was actually here in town this past weekend for a Gator football game. And he and I tried to get together, but he was already downtown near the stadium at a tailgate party. And when I tried to get downtown, forget about it. It's
maybe with a moped.
And I thought of that after the fact. I thought what I should do, and he and I are going to try and do this again because he's going to be back up here later in the season for another game. And what you just said is genius, because that's exactly what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to find a parking space a couple of miles out of downtown where you can still park for free, and not have to worry about the crush of people in traffic, and throw my bicycle in the back of my SUV, take it out of the SUV, and pedal downtown. And that will work. That'll totally work. So anyway, but yes, so here I am in Gainesville, which to me is, you and I are both sort of kind of from up north, Indiana, Ohio, whatever, however you want to choose it. This, to me, Gainesville is the most up north looking town in Florida. It has real trees and rolling hills, and it's terrific. And I'm enjoying it here immensely. I'm trying to get myself kind of integrated into town a little bit and all that. And what you mentioned, something that now sparked my interest, and I wrote it down a little note to say, I need to contact a couple of local radio stations to see if they might need some part-time help.
Yeah.
And there's also, of course, the university has their own public radio station. And I was on public radio literally in my college days, which was so long ago, it's not funny. But so, yeah, I'm going to reach out to all of those folks and say, hey, you need somebody? I got time on my hands. So that's my story. And it's, what's the song? What a long, strange trip it's been. And here I am, and there you are. So unbelievable.
Long and winding road, as they say.
The long and winding road, if you prefer your Beatles songs. Absolutely. It's just been, and I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it all. I want to say I have no regrets. That's probably not true. I probably have a few regrets. I mean, everybody does, right?
Yeah.
There's another one, Sinatra. Regrets. I've had a few. But then again,
I wish I would have got into comedy at an earlier age. I think I was just too old to get into comedy because it's a young man's game. A lot of traveling, a lot of little towns. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's just, if you want to really make any money, you got to have some television appearanries.
And you have to be willing to travel and late nights and blah, blah, blah. You bet.
Or else you're making like not even radio wages. And we've all been starting out in radio, know how that pays.
Yeah, it doesn't. But that's awesome. I mean, that's totally cool. So, wow. As they say, as your girlfriend says when she's been with you too long at the bar, wow, look at the time.
It's time for us to go with our first episode in the books.
I think that's awesome. And here we are just yakking it up like a couple old men just catching up on the park bench somewhere, which is basically what this show is going to be.
Yep. And now I do have some topics for next time. I had them ready in case we ran out of time, but we didn't. And again, we'll tell everybody, if you've enjoyed this, like and share.
Yes.
If you hated it, like and share so your friends can not like it too.
That's right. I love that.
And if you don't like it, we're the MJ and BJ show.
Right. Right. There you go. I love it. Yeah, no. So we will be back. This is going to be a weekly thing. And wherever you're hearing us now, we will be in the future. That's awesome. And like BJ said, continue to like it and share it and thumbs up it and comment. Whatever it is that you do to engage with this thing, just do that. And we'd appreciate it.
And now, knowing from my son, the way this works, I don't know if probably week one, but it probably might not be for another couple of weeks as we're doing this.
Right.
But it's going to be up on, iTunes, anywhere that if you listen to podcasts,
right.
Anywhere you listen to podcasts,
right.
You'll be able to find this podcast. That's That's how popular he is now. He can get us up on all the different platforms.
I hear that all the time with the shows that I listen to. Wherever you get your podcasts.
Yep.
We'll be there.
That'll be
We'll
just
be
like us. And of course, we do need to plug the podcastplayground.com.
Right. There's a THE in front of it there. So yes, thepodcastplayground.com. Go there and visit that, and you'll hear all the shows that are involved in this network that we're on. Yeah.
You'll hear all of our shows there, obviously, too.
That's right. All right, that's going to do it. Russ? Yeah, and last minute comments?
It's been a ball, this first one. I'm looking forward to the second one.
Time has flown by. It's been terrific. I'll let you take it out.
Hopefully we'll both live to do many, many more of these. And the audience that we had will be back. And, the new audience will build along the way. I'm excited about that also.
Thank you, folks. We'll see you next week, right?
See ya.
Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.